And
Hi guys, welcome. We are here with Charlotte Stowe, and she just got back from a trip to India and did kind of a gap year or gap term study abroad program, and she is going to tell us more about her experience. So we're excited to have Charlotte with us today.
Thank you for having me as well, Rob. All right, so as you just mentioned, I just got back from India for 3 months, and about 3 weeks ago I got back, and I went with a group called Carpe Diem Education. I found them online, and yeah, will you change the slide? So a little bit about me. I went to high school at Bend High. I've been living in Bend for about 10 years now, and my junior year of high school, I was not very motivated, and I was feeling a little bit done. And one of my friends mentioned this Baker Early College program, and I thought it was really interesting because I was in the IB program at Bend High, and I wanted to continue to get college credit, but I was feeling done with high school, and this was perfect for me. I could go to COCC, get a head start, and graduate early, which is exactly what I wanted. And so I did that. My senior year, I went to COCC, and I graduated after 1 term. So a little bit about my trip. So like I said, I traveled with a gap semester / gap year program called Carpe Diem Education. We traveled around northern India for a little over 3 months, and we had no cell phone. So we left all of our electronics behind, and we were completely off the grid, which was amazing, but also very difficult. So I met everyone in my group in San Francisco Airport first time, and then we flew to Singapore, and then Hong Kong, and then finally Delhi. We were all dispersed out around the United States, so none of us knew each other prior to meeting each other in San Francisco. We stayed in Delhi for about 5 days, and then we sightseed, we did workaways, and a lot of interesting stuff in each place. We stayed everywhere for about 1 week, and then we'd hop on an overnight train and go to the next place. So we were packing our bags, unpacking our bags, and moving all the time. And we stayed busy every single day. I actually had my leader, Rebecca, track how many miles we were walking a day, and it was about 5 to 8 miles every single day. So yeah, we stayed very busy. Some of the highlights of my trip. So to start off, the food, because Indian food is absolutely amazing. We ate mostly street food, which was the cheapest option because we were all on a budget. One of the big things that we learned in our group was how to save money while you're traveling. And so I would eat this almost every day, which is called thali. So you would get a plate, and you get some rice, some dal, some curry, some veggies, and then this, which is called chapati. And it would be about 70 rupees, which is $1 US, and it was non-refillable. So you could just keep going, or it was refillable. So you could just keep eating and eating and eating. And for $1 every single day. Yeah. And this was the Golden Temple, which is a religious monument for Sikhs. We learned a lot about politics and religion and kind of like religious persecution while we were here. So the 3 main religions in India are Sikhism, Islam, and Hinduism. And all of these religions have kind of had a history of love, hate, and war, and a lot of mass brutality. So we were in the heart of that when we were at the Golden Temple. So we saw a lot of tension. We went to a museum that described the gore that went on between the Muslims and the Hindus in the 1950s. And we also got to meet a lot of really beautiful people and learn about their religion, which was amazing. If you see here, these are some Sikh guards. So Sikhs are known to carry like 10 knives on them at all times and have weapons hidden all over them, and you'll see them walking down, you won't even know they have any weapons on them. They're masterminds at hiding everything, and they are all like really high trained in self-defense. So basically, everyone told us, do not get in a fight with a Sikh because you will get destroyed. And this building up in the left corner, that is the actual Golden Temple. It holds a lot of religious scripture for the Sikhs, and the building is completely made of gold. On the lower left hand, this is called Langar, which is all the Sikhs would come and volunteer there to make food, because they would, there's a lot of poverty in India, so all the religious temples would constantly be having free meals so everybody could eat and stay alive. And we participated in this. It was really fun. I think they're hucking chickpeas, and then I was cleaning dishes with ash, and then you could cook the food, you could mop the floors, and it was really fun. It's just free volunteering. We actually ate there too, and it was really amazing. And then these are some elephants. I got to see my first elephants when I was in India, which was absolutely amazing. Down here, one of the Indian guys is directly feeding the elephant, which is kind of amazing. The elephants really, really trusted the workers there. So this place was called Wildlife SOS, and it saved endangered sloth bears and elephants. Our group chose to see the elephants, and they were absolutely amazing. Up in the upper left corner, that elephant is named Susie, and she was the first elephant that they rescued. She's 63 and blind, and this elephant to the right is cleaning himself with dirt. And after this picture was taken, he would clean her off too, because she was blind, so she couldn't do it herself. And he would lead her around the entire perimeter of the camp so she could walk, and it was really, really sweet. Yeah. This is Rishikesh. I really, really loved Rishikesh. It is the yoga and meditation capital of the world. So down here, this is my friend Natalie. She's from Israel, and I met her at a yoga ashram. And this is Holi, which is one of the kind of holidays in India. So people would just walk around and flash color on you. It's really fun. This was also at the yoga ashram, just in a waterfall. Debbie, one of the guys on my trip, and I decided to jump in the waterfall. It's really beautiful. Up here, that is the Beatles and Maharishi. We went to the Beatles ashram, and it was amazing. There was art plastered everywhere, and Beatles music playing all on the grounds. And then down here was the bridge that we crossed every day to walk into the city. So yeah, it was beautiful. This was one of my favorite places. And then this is what a train looks like in India. It was pretty insane walking on one of these for the first time, but this was our main use of transportation, especially when we were going from city to city. So there'd be 3 bunk beds on each side, so 6 people sleeping in one column, and you're just surrounded by people you don't know, and everyone just talks and gets to know each other, and then you sleep on this really uncomfortable bedding, and you get one thin little blanket, and that's it. And it's really dirty and not cleanly at all. The bathrooms were pretty disgusting as well, but it's one of those experiences where you look back on it, and it was pretty crazy that I got to do that, and that I got to live off of basically nothing. And all of these people were so kind to us. We met so many friends on the trains. As you can see, these 2 guys, actually this is our first train ride experience, and we talked for 10 hours with these random people we met. And they couldn't afford blankets, so Carpe Diem bought them blankets. We all stayed up all night talking. Yeah. And these are some of the animals. So India is heavily overpopulated with people, but it is also heavily overpopulated with animals. Lots of dogs, stray animals, goats, there are cows everywhere. So here are some cute pictures of the animals. Funny story, the monkeys are actually pretty dangerous, so we had to fight them off with sticks sometimes, or else they would steal our cameras and our food. And like they would literally take tourist cameras and hold them in the air, and they wouldn't give them back unless you gave them food. And once you gave them food, they would just chuck your camera at the ground. It would break. So here's a monkey that stole somebody's popcorn, and one of the group members got a picture of it. So yeah, pretty funny. Yeah. And these were the Himalayas, also one of the most beautiful parts of the trip. In the lower left corner, that's McLeod Ganj, which is where the Dalai Lama lives. We didn't get to see him speak, unfortunately, but we saw a lot of Tibetan culture, which was amazing. Down here, this is Bagsu, which is where we were staying. It's where we did our student-directed travel, which was the section of the trip where our leaders didn't find us accommodation. They didn't tell us how to get anywhere. They said, you guys are in India, figure out where you want to go and figure out how you're going to get there. And we all decided to go here. And we made it, and it was really, really rewarding because we all figured it out. And it was actually easier than we all thought it was going to be. And this is just one of the sunsets in the Himalayas. Breathtakingly beautiful, as you can see. Yeah, it was amazing, very relaxing. And one of the best parts about being in India, or I think just traveling abroad in general, is meeting new people. We spent a lot of time with kids. We spent a lot of time teaching kids, tutoring kids, and just talking to orphans. In the upper left-hand corner, that was when we were at Salam Balak Trust, which was an NGO in Delhi that helped orphan kids get a place to live and kind of get their lives together and stay away from the gangs. So yeah, we actually walked into them learning some English, and we kind of walked into the classroom, and all the kids were so excited to see us and took a ton of pictures of them. They were great. These kids down here were some random schoolboys that just loved Americans and kind of just took a little photo shoot with us. And then we went to a city called Kolkata, and we met some theater kids that are fighting to kind of end all the suppression in India and make things a little bit more modern, like giving women more rights, kind of taking care of the environment more, and going away from money. So we got to hang out with them, and we played a lot of games with these kids, and they were amazing. I'm sitting right back here, and I was with a line of girls, and they kept asking me a ton of questions. Charlotte, like, will you sing something for us? Do you like Justin Bieber? They would always ask you if you like Justin Bieber. Yeah, it was amazing. And this was the end of our trip. We went on a 4-day trek in the Himalayas, and we walked for about 6 hours up the mountains every day. It's really, really tiring, but it was amazing. Here's a picture of a spider. They were about this big. So I was staying in a tent for like 10 days, and these spiders would just crawl all over you. And I cannot handle spiders, so the first time I saw one of these, I screamed so loud I woke everyone up. And they flooded over to my tent, and thank God I was staying in a tent with an Australian woman, because there's really huge spiders in Australia, so she just grabbed the spider and chucked it out the window. Yeah, but here's me, my leader Adam, my friend Owen, and then my friend Zevi. And we were hiking up the mountains together, and we actually decided to meditate by the river. It was really wonderful. And while you're in the Himalayas, there are a lot of goats and shepherds. So a huge flock of goats just came through our tent and stumbled everything down. But it was really entertaining while they were doing it. Yeah. Okay, so culture shock is a really, really huge part of traveling, and my whole group struggled with this a lot, especially in the first couple of weeks. If you can see, like on the left, there is 2 men working, and they were carrying a bunch of bricks all over their head. This is not something you would see in the States. They were doing a lot of really grueling manual labor that you would kind of see a machine take care of here. So that was pretty interesting to see, especially in the first week of being in India. Up here is representing the trash problem in India as well. There's trash everywhere. If you walk around the streets in the United States and compare it to a street in India, it looks like you're in like a nuclear war zone. That is the difference between the 2 countries. So it was pretty hard for my group to get used to that. Down here, it shows you how busy every single street was. So this was in Kolkata, which is a bigger city, but just because we were in the city didn't mean it made any of the streets more busy. Every street was flocking with people. Cars were constantly honking. And yeah, it was really intense. So the definition of culture shock is the feeling of disorientation experienced by somebody who's suddenly subjected to an unfamiliar culture or way of life. So my specific symptoms of culture shock was homesickness, being hungry all the time, and hyper-irritability. Kind of sounds weird to be hungry all the time, but I did some research and it actually makes sense. So I would experience being hungry like every 2 hours, which is not usual for me because I'm the type of person where I can eat 3 small meals a day and be fine. So I was constantly wondering, why am I so hungry? So it makes sense because every time you eat, it releases endorphins in your brain. So it's like the feel-good chemicals in your brain, which puts your body in ease and comfort. And when you're in a completely different culture and you're constantly on red alert mode, that's your body's way of like trying to calm itself down. So you might find yourself being extremely hungry all the time if you go somewhere uncomfortable. Yeah, interesting. But
Was that only the beginning?
No, the whole trip. Literally the whole trip. Yeah, I gained about 10 pounds, but it happens. Yeah, so the Indian streets are extremely loud. So the way they drive there, they don't use turn signals. There's no stop signs, there's no rules, there's no speed limit. There's none of that. They just beep when they want to pass people. They beep when they want to turn. They beep when they're about to hit you. And so there's beeping all the time. So my group would be like walking down the street and we would all just be like, oh my God, like make it stop. Just like, yeah, there were some times where we were all just like looked so angry walking down the road. And then we finally got out of the road and we were like, okay, we're good now. But after a while, you kind of get used to it and you learn how to tune it out, which is what happens anywhere you go. There's always going to be something that really bothers you. And then 3 months later, you're like, wow, that doesn't even bother me. That doesn't even bother me anymore because your brain just kind of shuts it out. Yeah. So down here is a representation of some of the beggars and the poverty in India. We saw a lot of beggars everywhere. And I think that was one of the hardest things that we saw as a group is there would be beggars with no arms, no legs, beat up, acid thrown on them, and they would just be like wanting money from us. And it's not really good to give it to them because usually they're injuries that made you want to give them money. Somebody had beaten them, so they would get money from foreigners and then give it to the pimps. So it was this huge like underground system. There's so many tourists in India. So we never actually gave money to anyone. A couple of our group members gave money to some people, but it was frowned upon because it would just continue the cycle. Up on the left here, I guess you're right, is the Shiro's Cafe, which was a cafe made from women that were, acid was thrown on them by their husbands, either because they couldn't birth a baby boy, or they weren't good enough wife, or they didn't want to be with them anymore, and divorcing is like really uncalled for in India. So if their wife was all of a sudden ugly, then they'd have the right to divorce them, which was really, really sad. And we ended up watching a video of all of their stories, and they started a cafe and are making a ton of money now and support to women's rights. So like I talked about earlier, in India, women don't have any rights and things are kind of starting to change. So when I went to India, it's like all of the women's rights movements just kind of started happening and everything just started exploding. Things are getting modernized a lot. And so if you walk down the street, you'll see a lot of people protesting women's rights, which is really, really amazing. But it was also really hard to watch when I was there. All the ladies in our group, we were not allowed to wear anything more revealing than like a short sleeve shirt, like absolutely no cleavage whatsoever. We weren't allowed to wear shorts, and we weren't allowed to swim because we couldn't be in a swimsuit. That was hard for us, but we eventually got used to it, and I swam anyways in my clothes, so, but yeah, next slide, please. Group dynamics. Okay, so this is something that I didn't know about when I went on my study abroad trip, and I think it's really important that you know about before you go on a group experience. So this was one of the main focuses of our trip. When you kind of get thrown into another country with a group of people you have never met, you're gonna have problems with some of the people. It's just bound to happen. And you're going to have best friends in the group, and you're gonna have people that you really, really hate. You're gonna have people that you can't really decide how you feel about. But problems will happen, fights will start, and petty things will go down. So I did experience this in my group. Every group experiences this. Every group has issues. And our leaders kind of had really difficult conversations with us to mature and deal with it in the inappropriate way. My leader, Adam, was specifically telling me, like, okay, maybe if you don't want to talk to this one girl for the rest of the trip, that's fine, but then one day you're going to be in an office situation and you're not going to like somebody in your office, and you can't just quit your job. So you have to deal with it, and you have to be mature. So that is what we did. And although our group went through some really, really difficult situations, by the end of the trip, we all learned how to communicate better. I feel like I learned how to communicate a lot better, and I matured a lot. So at the end of the day, I'm glad I didn't get along with some of the people on my trip, because they taught me a lot about myself and a lot how to throw myself into adulthood, especially I'm going to be working in kind of higher end jobs. So, yeah, next slide, please. Okay, so the good, the bad, and the mediocre. So as I was saying earlier, like all things in life, there are good times, there are bad times, and there are moments that really, really stand out. This continues during an abroad program. Don't have the impression that all of a sudden life will just get better because you're in a different country and everything's exciting, because that's not how it is. Just because you're in a really cool country does not mean that you won't still have struggles and you won't still deal with the things that you deal with every day back in your hometown. So you kind of realize, like, after a couple of weeks, that life kind of remains pretty much the same. You're just in a different setting and you're dealing with different issues. So one of the things that I told myself is, like, okay, so my life, I'm still in the same mental state, but everything that I'm seeing out in front of me, every obstacle that's being brought to me, every challenge that I'm facing it harder, and I'm learning way more than I would back in a different setting. So, yeah, next slide, please. So there were difficult moments of the trip. Not everything was rainbows and butterflies. There were times where I struggled a lot, and this was one of those times. It was called Dharmalaya Institute. It was a sustainability farm up in the Himalayas. It was all vegan, absolutely, like, complete ahimsa, which is no harm in Hinduism. And we basically had to hike all of our stuff 40 minutes up a hill, plop it down, and eat only vegetables for 10 days and work for 7 hours a day for free. So it was very difficult. And this was towards the end of our trip, and we were all just so exhausted, so ready to be home. And we were here, and we had to make the most of it. And it was absolutely amazing, and I'm so glad that I went. We learned a lot about sustainability and the environment, and how to treat the world better, how to kind of get away from consumerism. But while I was here, I definitely struggled a lot in my head. It was very difficult. My leaders actually had to talk with our group about getting more motivated, because some of us started skipping some of the labor work that we had to do every day. And the last 3 days, we all just kind of had to toughen it up and push through really hard. Next slide, please. This was Jadul. So this was one of the village homestays that we did. This was also an amazing experience, but very, very difficult. So we were out in the desert, and it was about 110 degrees every single day, and we couldn't wear shorts. So we were very hot. And every night we would go into the village and sleep with our homestays. And it's not really a legitimate house. It's kind of just like a half house. So there's walls on the side and there's a roof on top. Then there's no wall in front. There's no front door. It's just wilderness. There'd be chickens and water buffalo like running around you in your sleep. And I was sleeping on a wooden mattress, no padding whatsoever, with a thin blanket, next to one of my friends on the trip, Carrie. That is Carrie. And our host parents were sleeping right next to us, and my host dad was a chain smoker. So all night he would be smoking cigarettes next to us, and so we could not sleep. I actually woke up with, I think it's called sty infection in your eye. So I woke up one morning and my eye was all swollen, and we would get up in the morning, we'd have to do farm work with them, and then we'd go back to the school. This is the school. It's a girls only school, and we would teach them English and play games with them for hours in the heat. So it was very, very long days and not enough sleep to go with them. I would probably get like 3 hours of sleep every night and wake up just destroyed. I actually have a funny video on my camera that I showed my mom of me waking up the next morning, and I was just like, oh my God, this is so hard. Like, I want to go home right now. But we ended up making it through. None of us died. One of my friends and I on the trip actually got really, really sick and was throwing up the whole time. And she actually recalls like this memory as like one of the best memories of the trip because it was so difficult and we made it through. So kind of one of those things. Next slide, please. This was the yoga ashram, also an amazing experience. It was under my impression that ashram lifestyle would be very relaxing. You do yoga and meditation all day, and it would be kind of like a cleanser. So I thought I was going to this, like, oh, I'm going to be stressed out right now, but oh, as long as I go to the yoga ashram, I'll get to relax and hang out. No, that was not what it was like whatsoever. So we'd wake up at 4:30 in the morning every morning, and we would chant songs for half an hour. Then we'd meditate, and then we'd do 2 hours of yoga. Then we'd hike. We'd do more yoga, more meditation, more chanting, and finally go to bed at 9 o'clock at night. And all the meals were planned out for us, and we couldn't talk for like 7 hours of the day. So we had to be dead silent, and we had to wait for meals. And between lunch and dinner, there was like 6 hours of not eating food after hiking and doing a lot of yoga. So it was very much the opposite of stress relieving and nice. It was more of like, oh my God. And actually one of my leaders told me the whole point of living an ashram life is sitting in meditation and being silent for so long. It forces all of your deeper issues to kind of come up to the surface and forces you to think about them and deal with them. So my whole group was struggling. We were all dealing with a lot of stuff, and we had to all be there for each other, and we weren't all getting along at this time. So it really, really pushed all of us to the edge. And the last couple of days, we all made it through, and I actually worked on a lot of emotional issues that I was having and found the rest of the India trip to be absolutely amazing, like more amazing than it was before this ashram experience. So even though during the experience it was very difficult, afterwards I left with a more positive attitude and a more positive look on Indian culture. Yeah. Next slide, please. So some student study abroad programs. Obviously, Carpe Diem education is one. Carpe Mundi is a branch off of Carpe Diem, but it is for kids who can't afford the program. They raise a lot of scholarship money, and you have to fill out your FAFSA to get in, and you go on the same program with the Carpe Diem kids, but they pay for it for you. And you have to do, I think, at least 20 college credits when you're on each study abroad program. I had a couple girls from the Carpe Community program on my India trip, and they were taking 30 college credits for free. So it was really good for them. Also, Rustic Pathways is very similar to Carpe Diem. I'd say it's a little bit bigger. So Carpe Diem is run by like a smaller, it's kind of like a family-run business, and then a Rustic Pathways is more global and big. Leap Now is the same way. My teacher, Rebecca, used to work for Leap Now and loved them. My teacher, Adam, worked for Rustic Pathways as well. Then there's Roadless Travel, which is kind of like a family-run business. It's the same level of popularity as Carpe Diem. My teacher, Adam, also worked for them and raved about them. And then there is Ondeo, which is a business that I went through a different study abroad program with, which was I went to France and I did a homestay. That was by myself and not with a group of people. This is kind of a different program, but they do offer study abroad stuff. And there's also a lot of programs at COCC. I know they just went to Spain a couple weeks ago. They have a study abroad program every single year, so you can talk to your COCC counselor about that, and you can also get scholarships for that. So yeah, next slide, please. More resources. So after you do one of these trips and you learn how to travel on your own, these are kind of the options that you take as like, okay, I want to keep traveling, but I don't want to go back to one of these programs. I can't afford them, can't do this. I'm fresh out of high school, I need a gap year. These are the options that you want to take. So work visas, if you want to travel abroad and you don't want to do one of these programs, you need to look at getting a work visa, and it depends on which country you're going to. Some of them are really hard to get and some of them aren't. Like I was just looking at Spain and Japan, and I'm hearing that Spain, if you want to get a work visa, it'll take up to 9 months in advance, so you have to plan. So you really have to do your research if you want to make money while you're traveling. Then there is Workaway, which is a website where organizations will provide you free accommodations and free meals if you work for them. So it's like a work trade deal. So you can really, really stretch out your money. It's all over the world, and it's actually just a website. You pay $30 a year to access it, and there's plenty of different types of work that you can do. So the idea is if you want to do Workaway and travel, you want to have saved up like a decent amount of money before you go, and then you want to make that money stretch so you can stay longer. So that's why you do Workaways. Then there are tons of volunteer organizations around the world, and all of them need help. When I was at the Sustainability Farm, we had a presenter talk about a French volunteer organization for orphans and refugees, and that they were needing a ton of help. And there's a lot of refugees kind of in between France and Britain, and they're struggling to migrate between each country. There's a lot of organizations that need help. And when you go, because I volunteered for lots of organizations when I was in India, and it was amazing. And yeah, it's free work, so you're not getting paid for it, but you have a sense of fulfillment while you're working there. You meet so many people that don't have as much privilege that you do, and it forces you to take a step back at the world and look at things from everybody's perspective. You see the world from your perspective, you're an American, a little bit more privileged, and then you see somebody who has no house, no family, and absolutely nothing. And the fact that they can smile at you and still laugh and still be happy, it really makes you consider, like, what do I need to be happy? And how can I get that? So I think volunteer organizations are really important to at least try once in your life. And then there's Teaching English, the TEFL. So I'm actually looking into this right now, but you can get your certified teaching English degree, so you can study abroad and go into different schools and make up to like $3,000 a month teaching English. Some countries require that you have a bachelor's degree, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be a bachelor's degree in teaching. Some countries require absolutely nothing, not even this certification, and you can just go and make money, meet people, and be a teacher for a little bit. So this is like a really, really good, it's just kind of an amazing program to get into because you can make a lot of money and you don't have to be certified to do it. And you can also kind of like wedge your way into the culture. What better way to learn somebody's culture than to teach to a bunch of kids? And then hostels. So a lot of people know about hostels, but they are cheap community hotels. It's okay, we don't need the rest of the slideshow. That's like the end. Okay, thanks. So hostels are cheap community hotels. Usually it's a bunch of foreign travelers that don't want to spend too much money. So you kind of live in a dorm with a bunch of people, and it's very, very cheap. Usually there's rooms of like 5 to 20 bunk beds, and it's just all people from around the world. So they were very, very fun to stay in. That's what my program stayed in the entire time we were in India. Some of the hostels were a little ghetto, and some of the hostels were very nice, and we actually met a lot of friends at them. We met a lot of people from around the world, a lot of Israelis, and you kind of get to learn about more culture other than the one that you're in. So I learned about Indian people, and then I also learned about Israelis, and then I met a cool German guy, and then I met some Swiss people, and I learned all about them as well. So it's a great way to kind of travel the world, even if you're just going to one place. I very highly recommend it. I think that is it. Yeah. Do you have any questions? Okay.
So I just have a comment. First of all, amazing job, Charlotte. You matured and grew a lot. And
Thank you.
I know you really well beforehand, but I can just see just huge growth. I'm sure Mom, you see it even more than I do just from my outside window, but really incredible. And you're very articulate, and thank you for explaining kind of the deeper issues of just the type of maturity that happens when you study abroad. So that's really fun. I love your heart for volunteering, and you did a great job of explaining that piece of it. So yeah, my question for you is, what is next for you?
Oh gosh, that is a difficult question for me. I have a lot of options, and I haven't really picked one of them. So I am probably going to, I'm obviously going to continue with my college future life, but the question is, when do I do that, and how and where do I do that? So I'm thinking about staying at CSCC for another year and kind of doing my prerequisites at community colleges, so I don't have to spend a fortune just to get my prerequisites, which is ridiculous in my opinion. But so yeah, I'll probably stay at a community college until I get my AAOT and then transfer to Portland State. I also want to travel more, so I'll probably take a legitimate gap semester or actual gap year and go alone, go somewhere and hopefully teach English. That's my plan right now. Travel and school.
Got it.
Yeah.
So for this young lady, for example, right here in front of me, let's say she has never traveled before, and maybe what would be like a good first step for somebody who, like, you already had some experience, you mentioned going to France already, what might be for somebody that's totally uninitiated in this, like a more comfortable first step than going to India for 3 months?
Yeah. So what I did, I knew I wanted to travel. I did a lot of research. I mean, not like a lot of research, but I looked up like the countries that I wanted to go to, and the ones that kind of excited me, I could just feel it when it was right. So I guess what I would say is, like, don't push yourself to travel, or like don't force anything on you because it looks like good on a resume or because you just want to get it out of the way. Go with what your heart is telling you and what excites you and what really makes you kind of looking forward for your future. That's what I did, and it worked out for me. Yeah.
When you did the Ondeo to France, was that through Summit, or that was one that you did?
That was through
separately?
Summit.
That was the Ondeo. That was through Summit.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So they used that Ondeo company.
Yeah.
They did.
Yeah. Summit put it together for the students, and then Ondeo did the travel exchange and got the host families. Yeah.
And how long of a trip was that?
That was a month. Shorter than India, but still just as important. In that trip, I learned kind of like how to be isolated and how to be okay when I have no one, because my family didn't speak the best English and I didn't speak the best French. So I was really, really alone. And then in India, I learned how to not have any second of alone time and be constantly with people. So I kind of got the best of both worlds, and I think it's really, really important to do that. Really important. I learned a lot about myself in both situations.
You mentioned you're getting college credit for part of your time there, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about that? What kind of classes you were taking either there or kind of the follow-up required?
Yeah, so Carpe Diem works with Portland State University, so kids can get college credit while they're also doing a gap semester or a gap program. I did this, and I'm taking 18 credits. I don't have them yet because I still have to finish my essays. But basically, the whole Carpe Diem program is set up to meet the requirements of all of the classwork. So we don't have to attend classes while we're in India. We're already doing the volunteer programs that like match the curriculum of the class. So we just have to make sure that we're showing up to the volunteer programs. I mean, if we're sick one day, that's okay. But if I were to like slack off for the entire trip and decide I don't want to do any of this anymore, then my teacher would say, oh, well, then you can't get the credit. But yeah, so I was taking environmental sustainability, and the big thing that got those credits out of the way was I had to read a book on environmental sustainability, and we stayed at the environmental sustainability farm for 10 days. We learned a lot there. I also took philosophy, which was specialized in religions, and I'm very passionate about religions. So we did a segment of the trip where we learned about the partition between India and Pakistan, which really goes of the history of Muslims and Hindus and the persecution between both religions. So I did a huge study on that, and we went to a museum about the partition, and we went to lots of religious locations. So kind of got the credentials for that class out of the way. I did art, which I specialized in meditation. So we stayed at the yoga ashram, and we did a lot of meditation throughout the time there. We went to a Buddhist monastery, and some of us tried meditating every day. I had already been meditating for a lot of my life, so I wanted to kind of enhance my knowledge on meditation. So I did a lot of research on my own, and while being in India, which is the place where meditation was born, it kind of naturally, you learn a ton about it when you're there. And then the last class that I took was called International Globalization, which was about poverty in India. And we saw poverty every single day. So it doesn't matter how much time I spent in the classroom learning about Indian poverty, it wouldn't compare to just 1 minute of staring somebody in the face that is living on the streets and has nothing. So that's where all that came from. And I had to do 3 15-minute presentations. I read like 6 books when I was in India. They were all for my classes. And then now I'm currently writing the papers for them. So yeah, that's how they're set up. And I got a nice scholarship off. So I got like $1,000 off of my college classes, which was really nice.
Yeah. So essentially you paid the same tuition price as every other PSU class, and then needed to pay your own transportation? Or were there other fees that we should know about?
So the fees it kind of separates the schooling and the actual trip. So it tells you how much the trip is going to cost, and you pay for the transportation, all of the activities, all of the food, everything you need for the 3 months. And then if you're doing school, it's separate. So my schooling, I think, was about, what was it, like a little 1,700 for 18 credits. So that's actually pretty good for university credits. I paid that separately, and then, yeah, the other, what was it like? How much was the trip?
The cost was $15,000.
Yeah.
Trip. Food and
So if you didn't do the college credits, you wouldn't pay the 1,700 to still go on the trip.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Cool. Thank you so much for sharing, Charlotte.
Of course.